Brad Jones, good to have a moment with you here in South Africa. Welcome, bud.
Yes, always good to be in South Africa.
It's not your first time, right?
No, man, I've gotten the privilege to be here like close to 10 times, maybe more.
Wow.
It truly is one of my favorite places. I've only been to Durban once, but I have been to Durban before we were friends. It's a long time ago.
Well,
but I love South Africa.
You're coming to Durban soon. Your family, have they been out to SA before?
My wife has, no, my kids have not. And when I have a almost 6-year-old. They dropped me off at the airport. They're like, why aren't you taking us? And I'm like, well, 1, you have school. 2, it's expensive. 3, I've got some work to do, but maybe next time. And if you have your way, I'll be there.
If I have my way, you and the family will be with us in church, a whole bunch of stuff. So obviously you've just been in South Africa in this moment as we film this, a passion equip time. I'm going to ask you to speak a little bit about your heart behind that, and obviously Louis Giglio's heart behind that. We're grateful for you guys. But I wanted to just take a moment to just talk leadership around all of that. So like capture some of the gold that is in you, that is in the 10 years of visiting our country and what you've seen and learned and in building church back home. But let's backtrack slightly.
Okay.
You've been with Passion for how long?
Almost 15 years, and have been a few different positions. Right now, I look after our Atlanta churches. I also help steward what we're doing on the conference side or international. It's been a whirlwind. I actually got offered a full-time job with Louis when I was in South Africa. We were doing a world tour, and we were in Midrand, right here between Johannesburg and Pretoria. And he said, hey, I think after this tour is over, I'd love for you to come join our team. And so that's another reason Johannesburg's, Pretoria, Gauteng, all of South Africa has always had a special place in my heart.
Well, I want to hear more about that, but I liked the title he gave you in that first.
Yeah.
It was what, Navigator or something like that?
Yeah, he's just like, he was like, hey, why don't you, I was the roadie for the tour. They had asked me to help with one of the cities on this 17-city international tour. They kind of ran out of the team that they knew well. So they asked somebody like me that they kind of knew and they said, hey, can you help us? That's a longer story. Sorry, you didn't really ask, but all that said. They'd asked me to help with Manila, Philippines. I was like, man, so honored to take a few trips, help prepare the way for a Passion in Manila. I said, but I'm single and I've fulfilled my commitment in my church. If you need me to go on the whole thing, I'll go for free. And they're like, oh, thank you. It's so kind. And I was like, well, hey, I went for it, and
that was it.
The next day they called back and they said, were you being serious? And can you go on the whole thing? So in 2008, I got to travel the world. And I was 27 at the time-ish. My math, we just finished Passion Equip, so my math, I'm not even going to try to do the math right now. But we did these events all over the place, and my job was just to kind of keep morale high and make sure everybody and everything got to the venues, the hotel, and then back to the airport. And that was like Chris Tomlin's guitar, get David Crowder's pedal board, or Louis and Shelly and our whole team. And in the middle of it, he was like, why don't you come do this for me? Wow. Like roll with me in life, help me, help our movement. And in this season, we could really use a navigator. And Louis is so creative. He's an artist. So
when you said that word, I thought, how does he,
So he's like, he didn't want to call me right-hand man or assistant or whatever. Yeah. He was just like, help, you will know in life where we kind of need to be heading, not just like assistant, but just in helping us get there. And my friends gave me a hard time about it all the time. They're like, you just run the GPS, but I mean, what a privilege to kind of get a front row seat to Passion and come alongside Louis, help him carry what God called him to carry. Still doing that today. It's why I'm in South Africa right now.
I love it, and I love that you're here. We're grateful for you being here. So you've seen a lot of things. You've seen God move in different nations, different ways, through different people, sometimes through song, other times through maybe a random chat in the street, just God using you guys. I love that you're available for that. Why South Africa? What is Passion Equip like? Why this moment in time? Like, I'm intrigued by this season.
There's a whole lot into that. Even before I was in Passion world, there was a special connection between Louis and South Africa. A lot of it traced back to the indescribable talk that was on DVD, being passed around and shown on all kinds of different screens and moments. And then as we've started coming to do different gatherings, there's just been a special friendship. I mean, even several years into it, meeting you and feeling like kindred spirits.
Yeah, in a hotel lobby, random.
Exactly. Here in Melrose Arch,
yeah, that's
you
right.
Came up, and you've always been kind to do that. And then today, the event that we had, I mean, I really was not expecting it, but several of the key leaders, not just their staffs, not just their teams, they were here. And I'm like, how humbling.
Yeah.
And hopefully we've done well to prove ourselves as faithful stewards and servants, and that has built some trust. But we're grateful. We love the friendship. So when we've never done a Passion Equip, but honestly, and I don't know who all's listening to your podcast. I know it's in the tens of millions now. You were just telling me,
just prophesying.
But I think that what we realized, we've kind of had it in our heart to continue to invest. Wasn't time to do a big stadium event, but being here in these 2 days, one in Cape Town. Again, apologies for no Durban.
Watch this space.
And but God's leaders they're hungry.
Yeah, they are.
They're beat up. They need some encouragement, and we need it because we know that because we need it. But to even have somebody come and just say, "Don't quit. You're doing a good job. It's worth it." It was really special.
Well, I mean, for me today was incredible. And if you're listening to this, the moment as Passion Equip is probably going to come again. And you should know about it because it shifted something in me personally. I mean, I can say that with sincerity. Like, you guys brought, and I said this already, a humility and an expectation. I think that world together is beautiful in the church. I love your humility. I love your humanness as a team, the willingness to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. But then also not to let go of this fact that God's called us to raise our expectations of a God who's able, like you said, to do immeasurably more, And so I just love that you bring that. Let's talk leadership because it's what you guys bring. It's humility, it's expectation. But when you guys jump into the conversation around leaders, right? You've been in Passion for a while. You've had some, let's call it some big names that many people would associate with in your world come through. What is leadership? What are you looking for in leaders?
I mean, leadership, that's a big question. Well, I'm going to have you ask it. The first things that come to mind, I by no means am a leadership expert, but I do think, and I spoke on it a little bit today, and it's the Jesus principle, right? Is if you're, not willing to serve, then why should you be able to lead? And modeling after Jesus, who did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, but took on the form of a servant. He did not come to be served, but to serve. That's the kind of leader I want to follow, is somebody that has a cause bigger than themselves that they're willing to sacrifice for. And I'm grateful to get to serve under Louis and Shelley's leadership, but they have a much bigger vision. And ultimately it comes down to advancing God's kingdom. So it's easier for me to follow them. Yeah. It's hard to follow self-seeking people. And granted, come on, we're all self-seeking. I
mean, we've got those moments
struggle
where we're like,
with it,
what am I doing?
I'm struggling with it right now because you've got a podcast and I don't. And I'm like, well, why are you, maybe I should start welcome to Brad Jones's Leadership Podcast. I'm here
There's two people watching,
Dylan.
me and Brad, just checking we did okay. But
we all have to struggle with it. But at the end of the day, if we fight the battle of selfish ambition and commit ourselves to something bigger than ourselves, I believe that creates a wake that people want to get in.
So your story is that, right? Like you say, you went on this tour, you're like, I'm up for it, we'll do whatever's required. Next thing, you're being invited to be a navigator.
Yeah.
And that's taken you around the world, actually, with people like Louis and Shelley and their story, which is incredible how God has used them. And yet your story has become bigger by submitting to someone else's. I want to kind of just hang there for a moment. Leaders listening, they got this dream of a story for their life, but perhaps they don't know where to go with it. And yet I'm sure you have these big dreams. You still do. I think your life is big in itself. And yet you're willing to say, I'm going to go after what they want and trust God that you still get. Like, how does that work? The tension of submission, but also having what is in your spirit.
Yeah, it's definitely a tension, in all honesty. I like to lead and Louis likes to lead. And we recognize that in each other. And he gives me opportunities and moments. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think one of God's greatest gifts to me, and I would tell it to any up-and-coming leader. One, don't chase the resume or the platform.
So good.
Find, and it's maybe sounds trite to say this from somebody that gets to do what I do and the people I'm around, but find somebody you respect and trust and get under them. Because even what Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. And I'm grateful that I had even other mentors before I worked at Passion that I can look back on and thank God that he put me under their leadership. Yeah. And I think if we get under the right people and not spend so much time, especially early on, thinking about getting over the right people.
That's so good.
Then it's been my story. I feel like I'm more prepared to be over people because I've been under the right people. Yeah. And it doesn't mean any of the leaders are perfect. And big name, small name, it's not about platform.
The way God works.
It's about character and faith. And do you put yourself under a leader that when you see them in front of people and behind and away from people, that you respect their character, you admire their character, and you want to model their character? That's kind of what leader I want to be. Yeah. And that people be like, he's not perfect, and he's not Jesus, not God. So I submit to Jesus first. But I do want to learn from him because what I see on and off the stage.
Yeah, so I honor you guys for that, because I think since that lobby moment when we connected, and then Sydney a few years later, and the odd message over the internet through the gram.
Through the gram.
That's kind of how we got to know each other, by the way. Like, so it can work to the glory of God.
A minute ago when I was talking, I was looking that way, and I don't even know. So maybe just if you're watching it, and I don't know why I didn't look at the camera. I was just like, anyway, back to you.
To the people in the
back
distance.
Back to your podcast.
To the people in the distance.
Remember, this is your podcast, not mine. I don't have a podcast.
This is my podcast. Your humility, I don't even know where I was going with that, but I think for me, sitting in the room, this is what I was going to say. Sitting in the room today, I felt like arriving, I recognized Passion has a vision bigger than mine, and it's a good thing. I got dreams. God's giving me new ones.
Ooh, that's a good word.
But I felt like arriving today, I was going, you know what, they've got a vision bigger than the one I've lived in, and I want to catch it. I want to catch it. So God, I'm here for it. Yeah. Like, I'm here to build church, and I'm here to give myself, and I loved your sermon today around that, like, fill the water to the brim. Like, don't just, like, teaspoon it. Like, let's put everything we can into this moment for Jesus to turn it into, in the story, wine or something supernatural.
You made a big point. I'm going to cut you off on your podcast.
Go for it, bro. My podcast.
I think that it is helpful for all of us to be, and I've learned this, so I'm honestly stealing this from Louis. But it's good to be around things that are inspiring and people that are inspiring. And when you said that, I was like, even if you show up to something that might be bigger, then you're doing, well, good for you, because it makes you want to have a bigger world and a bigger dream. And it goes, well, if God did that through them, maybe he's got big stuff for us.
Well,
you don't show up to compare and compete,
today.
You know?
But I mean, that could be someone listening to the podcast now saying, man, we just tuned in. We wanted to hear who this American is and what he has to say. And hopefully when they leave, they're feeling like we should be believing for bigger things.
That's right, yeah.
And we should be carrying more humility. So I came in this morning feeling like, I don't know what to do next. The dream is big, but I don't know where to start. And I left the room today feeling like, man, I can't wait to get back to what I've called to build in the local church. And I feel like some of that passion story, filling stadiums even, like we dream of those moments to the glory of God, can happen in Durban, you know?
Come on.
So
make sure you invite me.
Well, let's talk collab, because that's what it comes down to. Segue. You're invited. We will take you to the South African Big Five bush as well. You have to bring your kids.
Which is way better than Kruger.
Yeah, but you have to bring your kids. That's the ticket. But collaboration has been Passion's heart, just to kind of maybe start closing in the space. It's something I love about you guys, showing up and saying, hey, whatever church you're from, let's just talk Jesus and see what he wants to do in your churches through us and you. How big is collab for you guys? How do you carry it?
We don't use the word collab too much because we're not as cool as you, nor does it sound as good coming out. But one thing that we've always championed is friendship. And, it's so healthy and important, and it takes time to build. And I think early on, even before I was in the passion world, if you're not, you use the word network, other people, we always shunned against networking or even strategic partnership. And there are places and times for that. But first and foremost, it's like, let's be friends. And let's try to be genuine friends and see what comes from that, And that was part of Passion Equipped today, because truly our heart is to do an investment and not just like a quick grab of like, hey, we'll give you a little bit if you give us a lot and show up to something bigger than us. But it's like, and granted, we can't be friends with like best friends with every single person.
Sure,
God
yeah,
knit your hearts together with kindred spirits. But for us, it's just like, who are the kingdom people?
Yeah.
I want to be around kingdom people.
I love it.
And let's be friends. And then if God bursts something, and if we can serve in any way, sure, come on.
Yeah. I mean, kingdom, even like business kingdom, right? So like
Yes.
guys in business are going, I got this world I'm building. I'm keen to like somehow have friends on the journey, but I'm scared they may take what I have. And I'm thinking like, just lose that thing, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of trust God that he's bigger than both of you.
Yeah, and what's the Proverbs say? The world of the generous gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with our friendship too.
I love it.
You know, because if you're generous in your time and in your experience and your money, your world, the promise is you get bigger, it gets bigger and bigger. It's got to come from a sincere place, you know?
Well, I don't want to promise too many things to anyone that might listen to this, but I'm looking forward to having you at a business breakfast at Link Church soon.
Okay, oh, this is getting a lot of pressure,
To
guys.
having you and the Passion team in a Durban stadium somewhere soon.
If the Lord wills.
If the Lord wills. Humility, but my expectations high. But in whatever form it looks like, we're just grateful for your friendship. Really, I mean that. And we love what God is doing through Passion, through your story. And just shout out to the family back home and say, like, South Africa is rooting for you as you have us.
Thank you.
And we love America, we love Passion, we love you guys as a family. Tell Brits thank you for sending her best.
Yeah.
Well, she might say she left that behind at home with the kids, you know.
Exactly.
But bless you, bro. Last question.
Yes.
What do you see for the South African church?
Whew. I see being around for a few days. I do want to see a lot of potential and hope. I'll be honest, I see a lot of hard work.
Wow.
And it's going to take a big effort because I know this country isn't easy to live in. And there's a lot of conversation about the state of this country. And I do have faith and belief and hope, but I don't just want to throw that out there that are like, it's always going to be uphill from here on out. I think it's a lot of hard work, but you're poised for incredible impact if people will commit to the work. And it's God through us, and it's just trying to remember that the work is worth it. And so keep trying to fight for gospel and justice and reconciliation and outreach to the continent. But that is work, and it's commitment. And I know it's tricky because people are coming to America from South Africa all the time. Yeah. It's hard to live here, you know, but God willing, there's some anchors that believe that big days are ahead for this country. I mean, your leaders are strong in terms of the spiritual leaders. I don't know the government leaders, but your spiritual leaders that I know are strong. Your land is beautiful. Obviously, there's an immense amount of challenges in history. But I think that this last 3 years, y'all can come out of it even stronger.
Well, I appreciate that. So shout out if you took a moment to tune in or listen. Thanks, Brad Jones, for being...
Hey, thank you for having me on your podcast.
The Dylan Leadership Podcast, yeah. We should think of a better name. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Thank you.